Good morning, everybody. I am here today on Investing Across Borders with my guest, Sandi Webster. And Sandi and I met through a very cool medium. We were both interviewed as participants in a book called The Immigrant Hustle, all about 50 immigrants that made an impact or have made an impact or are making an impact in the US or Canada from other countries. Now, Sandi's a little unique because unlike me, who immigrated 20 years ago when I was an adult, Sandi immigrated with her family when she was very young. Sandi, how old were you when you immigrated?
I was 9 years old.
So you didn't have a whole lot of say in the matter at that time, right?
Zero say.
Right. And I was just talking with Sandi because she has a Jamaican accent, and yet she came here when she was 9, and she said the accent developed when she was an adult and was getting more and more involved with people of Jamaican descent. So that's kind of funny. It's the opposite of South Africans. A lot of my friends and growing up were from South Africa, growing up in Toronto, and all of them come to Toronto and they want to get rid of their accent.
Accent.
So they change the way they speak, just like me. I speak American now, not that I ever really spoke Canadian, but they change the way they speak. But as soon as they talk to their family, their South African accent is so thick, you're like, that doesn't even sound like the same person.
It's a
So
different
Sandi, welcome
thing.
to the show. Please introduce yourself, give us a little brief bio, and let us know what you're doing to serve the world.
Sure. Thank you, Lauren, for having me. I
Of
appreciate
course.
it. So, about me, I started out being an entrepreneur very young. My first entrepreneurial venture was babysitting. And
I'm there. I
I
didn't even think of
started
that as
that.
entrepreneurial, but I guess all of us were entrepreneurs meant to
It
make money, right?
it is. I started when I was around 10. I grew up in a mostly Jewish neighborhood, and I would
They
babysit.
let you babysit at 10?
Yes, this is, I'm not as young as I look, Lauren.
Well, that's the beautiful part about being Black. You guys, seriously, you get to wear all those amazing wigs, okay? Like, I mean, I have a friend, she's in Toronto, and every day she has like this new wig. I'm so jealous, right? And
I don't wear wigs.
I know you have super cool hair, but you also do not age. But I mean, I'm a little jealous, but still, 10 is very young to babysit.
It's I in those days in the 70s, it was not young. It was
Wow.
very typical.
So I can
This
just leave my kid then because he's 10. So I'm just going to leave him.
You no, you don't necessarily leave them. You go to the house and some other person might be there, but you're in charge of the baby and making
Wow.
sure. And it doesn't have to be baby. It could be another, 5 or 6 year old that can take direction. And I learned that babysitting could make me money. I could have my own pocket money. My mom didn't have to give me an allowance because I was doing my own thing. And then I would turn on lights because it was a mostly Orthodox neighborhood and conservative
Oh, right.
neighborhood.
Of course. That's super cool because they can't, you were there on Shabbat or something and you would turn on the
Shabbat.
lights.
Yeah.
You would
And
be
so
what they call the Shabbos goy.
absolutely. There you go. You know very well.
Yes, I do. Of
And
course. Yes.
I would make $1. I would make $1 turning on lights for people, like a
That's
dollar
cheap
per light.
labor.
Yes, yes. And I
Smart
was making,
girl.
so that's how I made my first entrepreneurial venture. And then my babysitting turned into a little daycare.
Wow.
So I started
You weren't
having,
10.
later in my teens,
Okay.
I started hiring or getting my friends to work for me because I was getting too many babysitting gigs. And so I started hiring out my friends. That's my first consulting job, is to hire other friends and put
Right.
them on
Delegate. And then you get a piece of the action. That's the way to do it.
exactly. So that's how I started out. And, it really helped me a lot, Lauren, in understanding how to navigate, how to negotiate with both the people who are putting on gigs and both the people that were going to be my clients. And I thought, this is teaching me a lot. And later, I just had so many kids. I turned it into a daycare out of my home. And
Your own kids, you mean, or you're saying
no,
the
no,
kids you were
no,
watching?
the kids from the neighborhood.
Yeah, okay.
I just started having so many of them. I started a summer program because
Oh
they
my
were off
gosh.
in the summertime, and I started it out of the garage, and it just blossomed from there. So that was my first entrepreneurial venture. But I was always an entrepreneur. I crocheted and sold baby layettes. I My family, I come from a family of seamstresses, so I utilized that. And I just always felt like I was in control when I made my own money.
Absolutely. It's so true. I mean, it's an amazing thing when you think about being an entrepreneur and the difference from having a job. You know, I'm a lawyer and I've before I became an entrepreneur, which did not happen by choice. It just kind of happened, which happens to a lot of people. Um, I was always working for someone else.
Mhm.
And especially through COVID, look at how
Right.
much how
Wow.
dependent you are on
Yes.
somebody else. You have no control.
Yes.
Now, I'm not saying all the entrepreneurs did so well during COVID,
Oh,
but
no.
if
Oh,
you have your own business or you invest in real estate, which is a very big part of what I'm teaching people and a very big part of a lot of my clients' success, you have control over your destiny. And that's what we want at the end of the day. So
yes. And particularly for women,
for women,
whether in this country or in other countries, once a woman gets a job or become an entrepreneur, they really know how to navigate the world. And they're not as worried about, if I get a divorce, I'm going to be destitute. So I find being an entrepreneur something that's a lifesaver for most women.
right? Agreed. Yes.
And I've worked in corporate. So I've worked in corporate for, oh my God, too many years. I shouldn't say too many because it taught me a lot. That's
Sure.
where I learned, my business savvy. Because I realized when I had the daycare that I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I needed to go learn things from other people.
Hmm.
And so I went into the corporate world and I became a management, an executive in the corporate world, and managed a budget and managed a team and worked with different customer service and collections and marketing and all the different things that you could do in a corporation. And that was amazing. It was a great time. But I always knew I was just learning to leave.
Oh, interesting.
I wanted to learn all the things so I could go back to having my own business.
Isn't
And
that
sure enough,
interesting? So you always knew that was your destiny.
always knew.
Yeah.
And the thing that I was afraid of about having a corporate job or having any job is I got laid off after 9/11, after 16, 17 years of being a superstar in a company. I got laid off right after 9/11. And that's my aha moment
Hmm.
is, Sandy, go back to taking control of your
Hmm.
life. And my business partner for that business that I started right after 9/11, we both came from the same company and we were both women. And we realized that there was a phenomenon going on where women were leaving the corporate world after having their second child because they couldn't put in the hours, the 70-hour work week anymore. They didn't want to, right? And a lot of my friends who worked hard and now had children were staying home.
Yeah.
So my first business consultants to go was to utilize those stay-at-home moms who were senior level executives and putting them back into the workforce
Oh,
as
brilliant.
consultants.
Right.
And that was my very first company, Consultants to Go. I then sold that company in 2016 and started a second company, which is called Pandy. And Pandy was really a holding company of all the assets I didn't sell. So we did a lot of workshops. We invested in other companies. We bought pre-IPO stocks. We had a publishing, we have a book that we published and we published for others. So all of this was a holding company. And then earlier this year, I decided to take out the workshop portion and made it into online courses. And so that's owned solely by me. And that is Sandi Webster Coach Salting, because I started
Oh, I like
coaching
that.
people
Mhm. Nice.
how to do their own advisory board, create their own advisory board. And I started coaching them. I was a business coach for the last two or 3 years, coaching young women on how to get financing, how
Hmm.
to grow their businesses, how to hire people, and all the things a coach does. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But now with COVID, the having the online course was very appropriate
Sure.
because I couldn't do workshops in person. And this came along at a great time. So COVID for me was just a time of enlightenment and learning and launching a new product and getting it out there, building it. So that's what I did with my COVID time. And I'm looking forward to launching it in January. It launches.
So, a true entrepreneur, you were able to
Yes,
pivot
that's my background.
and find the silver lining in COVID, which
Yeah.
is awesome. So, Sandy, have you ever worked? Have you ever had challenges working with people, like having been in corporate America and now on your own? Tell us a little bit about your experience working with people or companies in other countries.
I would say, Lauren, well, let's start in the corporate world. That's where I learned to work internationally because I was on international teams
Hmm.
doing launching marketing products in other countries. And I learned to work in this venue that we have, telecommunication, because I couldn't travel all the time to other countries. So I had teams that were located in India. In the advent of outsourcing,
Hmm.
you started managing teams. And so you learn how to communicate and you learn how to get up at all hours of the night, right? To work across borders. And then I took that into my business when I started Consultants to Go and started working with companies who either wanted to come to the US to do business and I would help them, or I would do business in country,
Right.
whatever country they were in. And I still am continuing to do that in my current business, Lauren, because my course is an international one.
Well,
You
let's
can,
talk about your course because I think it's super important. And by the way, I know that your course was developed for profit businesses, but there's equally as much need and demand in the not for
absolutely,
profit world.
absolutely.
So
Anyone.
Sandy developed a course about how to build a successful advisory board. And
Correct.
this is so important because every company, maybe not the solopreneur, but every company needs an advisory board. Even a solopreneur
Even a
needs an
solopreneur.
advisory board, maybe more so. It just may not be called an advisory board,
No,
a
no,
mastermind, a
it
team.
can be called an advisory board because if you're a company, you could be a solopreneur in a company and you can get your team, like you said, together, all your mentors. A lot of times people have disparate mentors, one here, one there. But if you get them all in a room together on a regular basis so that they can give you continual feedback, you are forming your own advisory board.
Right, right. So, so tell us a little bit about that. How is there an ideal number of people? Is there an ideal profile, an ideal avatar? How does that look?
Well, you have to develop your own avatar that suits your business, that matches your company. And most people, if you ask them if they need an advisory board, they're like, "Oh, I have one. I call so and so. I call this friend. I call that." And that's not an advisory board. Those are just mentoring. But when you're putting people together in a room, you do have to look at the profile that you need. Why do I need this person on my board? That's the first question you ask. And when you're interviewing people to be on your board, you have to keep that in mind. How will this person be of value to my company? It could be that you need a particular expertise. right? You need someone, you need a lawyer. I'm sure you know a lot of companies who need lawyers, and
A lot
they're
of companies that don't bring on lawyers.
absolutely, absolutely. And so having a lawyer or a professional person, an accountant, someone on your board to help you look over your books and give you strategic advice is a wonderful thing. So you might need that. You might need someone who knows other people.
Right, a connector.
Funding, someone, if you need funding, can pick up that phone and get you in. We had someone who was great. They came from corporate at a very high level. And when we needed new clients or to break into a company, he can pick up the phone and make that introduction for us. So there are tons of reasons. You need to understand why you need that particular person on your board
Do
and
you feel
create
that,
the avatar.
I'm sorry, pardon me?
Create that avatar that you're talking about that
Yeah.
person.
Do you recommend that advisory board positions be paid or unpaid, or does it depend on the company?
It depends on the company and it depends on your what you need.
Hmm.
There are, so for example, I like unpaid advisory boards only because people are there from out of their heart. They're really on your side, they're pushing for you, and they're willing to give of themselves.
Right.
A paid board, there are some people you really need on your board and you can't get because their time is so scarce, and you might have to pay for that to get that. So it just depends. There are pluses and minuses for both.
Hmm.
You know,
What about the international aspect? How important is that when you're building an advisory
it's
board?
diversity. I like international people on my board because it gives diversity of, it can come in form of color, it can come in the form of gender, but just having that other world perspective
Right.
is fantastic because depending on the country they're from, they might do business completely different. I would suggest, let's say if you're doing business in Brazil, we were talking about Brazil, you might want to have someone on your advisor board from Brazil
100%.
that can help you navigate in that country and say, Sandy, what you're doing is not correct for this country. No
Right.
one will
Right.
ever buy it. Or if they speak a different language, that's always helpful to have them review your marketing copy or a different copy. Does this mean the same thing in another language?
Yeah, it's really a big deal. I have an ebook that I offer as a free download, which definitely you should take a look at, called Expanding Across Borders 10 Tips to Successful Expansion Across Borders. And the most important part of it, the most critical aspect of this global expansion is culture and understanding that the
Yeah,
culture is very different no matter what country you're going from and to. A perfect example of that is Target. When Target went into Canada, they did not modify their marketing or target marketing
yes.
sufficiently, and they failed. And it was because they were thinking Canada was the same as America, and it's not.
Oh,
And this is one. There's multiple examples of that, but Target is the most prevalent and the most recent, and certainly a very big faux pas of expanding across borders. And you're
I,
right. If you have somebody on your advisory team to help you with that process, you're going to be prepped and ready before you go in. You don't want to
absolutely.
be prepped and ready after you go
After.
in.
Well,
You
you're
don't want
not
to go
ready.
fire, ready, aim. You want to go ready, aim, fire.
Yes,
And so that's a very big deal. And that cultural aspect and bringing somebody on your board of directors or advisory board or however you characterize it. But also a big deal. We have Israeli companies coming into America, startup nation Israel. One of the challenges that these Israeli companies have, or the principles of these companies that are a lot of tech, is that they come to America and they're not prepped for America. They don't know how to, enter into a meeting. They don't know how to negotiate. They have their own method. It's very different than the American method, and it doesn't work. And if they don't have training or they don't have Americans on their board, they're going to end up creating a lot of problems for themselves. So that's
And what
very,
I'm
very
trying
important.
to learn is that we have a certain way of looking at people who are in business. And when someone from another country comes here, a lot of times they hold on to doing business in America the way they did it in their other country.
So true.
And they bring that aspect with
Well,
them.
it worked there, but it's not going to
Not
work
going to
here.
work here.
It worked there. Yeah, no. And I honestly have, since I'm Canadian and American and I work with a lot of Canadians, that's a very big challenge for Canadians because they're the differences are greater than the similarities. And I think that that's become even more apparent through COVID and the way that America has, let's say, not reacted.
Correct.
We'll just say that. And Canada's on lockdown right now, so
And we
it's
should be
just
too.
these cultural differences play a huge role in your business expansion and your success in expanding.
I see
So
it all the time with entrepreneurs who come from another country. And when they set up their businesses in the US, their modus operandi, I guess I should say, is they start with the thing they used to do best in the other country.
mhm.
And so I was just talking to my husband, who's also a lawyer, about this because there are people who, in another country, paying someone off might be the way of
Right,
doing business.
absolutely.
It's
Oh
just
well, don't worry, I'll just look at right. No, just
just
grease them. No,
that's how and they don't call it, they don't call it anything but doing business.
that's it.
And then that same habit is brought here, and it's no longer called. It's called
No,
bribery.
it's not a good idea. It's you can get in big trouble.
and and it's a struggle when you're working, and I find people from a lot of the Latin American countries or African countries, that's commonplace.
Russia,
Or the
China.
West Indian, because yeah, these are very commonplace things, and you have to break them out of that habit, or try to break people out of that habit on
Mhm,
how to do business here. And it's also a wake up call when you go to the other country as well. When
absolutely.
someone asks you, "Oh, I need money to pay someone," and you're outraged, like, why? Why should I have to pay for that? And so
100%.
it's both ways. You have to learn how to do
Absolutely.
business in a
Absolutely.
different country.
Absolutely. So Sandy, when you're coaching people, what does your strategic coaching look like now? Like, let's say I was a prospective client. What are you coaching exactly on other than advisory boards and that kind of strategy?
Sure. As a business coach, I find out what you need.
Hmm.
Of all, where do you need help? What do you need help with? So the advisory board came out of part of that. There were a lot of people who just needed help and didn't know how to get it, right? So I do a profile of you. You answer some questions and assessment, and I see where you need help.
Is that profile available to listeners, or is there a charge for that? In other words, if I was to promote this to my listeners, would they be able to undertake or complete that profile for
Not
free?
right now. Not right now. That
Not
is
okay.
not available. It's something I send as when someone wants to come on as a client.
Got it.
I do a pretty in-depth assessment to understand your needs.
Okay.
It's run the gamut, Lauren, from I'm too quiet as an entrepreneur, I don't speak up, and I need.
I never have that problem. That is not me. Okay. Just
I
saying,
believe
my
you.
problem is the opposite. I have trouble shutting up. So every time I'm on a call, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to shut up now. And I have to mute myself. And then I'm like, no, I have to say something. So
And that could be a problem too.
it
There are people
absolutely can.
who speak so much they have to learn to listen
Correct.
to other people or learn to take advice from other people. So I do that assessment of what you need in your company and what you want brought to the table for you. What can I bring to the table and help you with? So some of the things I've helped people with are just sales. That's
Sure.
a big thing in the corporation. I don't and hiring. I don't know how to hire. And
Mhm.
then I have new entrepreneurs who know how to do none of that. So I have to help them all the way from startup, registering their businesses, going through. So I have from startup to seasoned business owners. A startup company needs, I make sure they get an accountant. Are you doing your books properly? Are you paying your taxes?
Are you filing them?
This is something that new entrepreneurs always, well, didn't put aside money to pay taxes. And so I do just like the very finer detail things. And then if you're a company that's already over $1 million or $10 million, you have a very different need.
Absolutely.
It could
Right.
be learning how to get a new product into the
Mhm.
pipeline. Do I need to identify a new product or a new line of business? And so I help them with that. So it's very customized
Mm.
to the person and to the business.
Sandy, how would people reach out to you to learn more about your coaching and about your advisory board course and so on?
It's very easy to remember. It's my name, sandiwebster.com.
And
And
Sandy
my,
is has an I,
I,
Sandi Webster, not a Y.
yes. And my email is sandy@sandywebster.com.
Imagine that.
Yeah, yeah. Very easy to find me. And I'm always open to helping and mentoring and just being out there for particularly women business owners. But I have everyone, I take all comers.
Thank you. Well, it's been a pleasure getting to know you and having you on the show. And thank you for your time. I wish you a happy and healthy 2021.
Yes, we have to.
And hopefully, we'll have the opportunity to do some great things together, maybe with some of your international clients or some of mine as they're building advisory boards.
Yes, thank you.
So
Please.
thank you so much. And I will look forward to speaking with you in 2021.
Thank you, Lauren. Have a great year.
Thank you.